but blue sky. If I see blue birds singing a song, nothing but blue sky all day long. Never saw the sun shining so bright, never saw things going so right. Noticing the days hurrying by, when you're in love, my that's why oh blue, all of them gone, nothing but blue sky. Oh, all of them gone, nothing but blue sky from now on. Family and culture so see it coming down the street. Now I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Ain't she nice? Look her over once or twice. Now I ask you very confidentially, ain't she nice? Just cast an eye in her direction. Oh me, oh my, ain't that perfection? I repeat, put things to the fantasy. Now I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Oh me, oh my, ain't that perfection? Oh me, oh my, ain't that perfection? I repeat, don't you think she's rather me? Now I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Ain't she sweet?
So Bill, when did you start performing down here?
We were trying to figure that out when it was old Harriet's fault. She was reading the paper one day, we were home, and she said, hey, there's doing auditions down at the Spotlight, and she ought to go. So I went down there, and they put me on right away. But I don't know how long ago it was.
80s? Was it the 80s or the
Must have
70s?
been.
80s.
1928, right?
No, not that long.
That was when I was born.
Really? Yeah.
Well, I was made in
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
more than 19.
You know, we're lucky today. We have family of Patty Adams Schreiner. Raise your hand so we see who you are. All right. The people who love to meet this. And Ted Reeves will be here soon to talk about Bruce Scott, the architect. Also, we have family of Richard Mansfield Dickinson, the Logans, which are basically nephews. He bought the place after it had been foreclosed and after Holland had it for a while, and he lived here. And he was a founder, Richard Mansfield Dickinson was a founder of the Spotlight Club, which became a non-profit and eventually bought this building. And some of you, Larry, I know you were here when that happened. and who else? Some of you.
3 years old.
Yeah, and John, you've probably been around that long too. Do you remember the when you like burned the
Mortgage.
the deed or whatever? Did you guys do that?
No, I would
Burned the mortgage.
That was in 1978.
Okay.
They burned the mortgage.
Yep.
That was 1978. And that's what was told. I didn't get here till about 8 o'clock.
All right. Anyway, but there's a everybody here represents this incredible continuity of this building, and one thing that I've always wondered was, and it didn't actually take much to understand it. I wondered why isn't this building on the cover of everything that Tulsa publishes? Why? Well, I mean, what you see now, we have a certain amount of dilapidation, and it has been worse. There used to be a chunk missing right out of the center of that upper part, and we got that fixed, but you can still see even after that sad. So Bruce Scott didn't know everything about architecture when he was 22 years old, but someday we're gonna, get it all just completely restored. Smooth stucco so the spiders can't build their webs up there. We'll get this lighting out of here that makes it look like an industrial brownfield, and prevents people from using this as a movie backdrop, which there actually was a movie filmed inside the Spotlight.
Yes.
But because of the coronavirus and the government handing out money for things, all sorts of things, including arts infrastructure, that the Oklahoma and Tulsa County now has money that they can put towards rehabbing this place, and so we're looking at that process of how we'll go about getting that money. And there's other people in line as well, but they're interested in us. We've been hitting on it for years, telling our story that this place matters. It's 2 blocks from Route 66. You know how people are nuts about Route 66? That's it over there across that bridge. We're right here on the river. Everybody's going down to the river. So, and we have this jewel box setting for this building. So, here comes Ted. He'll talk about Bruce Scott. But anyway, so great things are ahead for this. And this monument is the purpose of it is not just to capture the history, but to advertise honestly and make Tulsa aware that we really have something. San Antonio is referred to as the Alamo City. How much money do they bring in because of the Alamo? Which, so anyway, the Alamo you can walk in and out and look at, but we have over 3,000 Tulsans have performed on this stage. We have, and 250,000 have seen shows here. So this city has deep roots and connection to this building. A few years ago, we did a project. Jer, I guess, our lifelong building manager, he saved a copy of every Saturday night program with all the cast. So we got some volunteers and we scanned those PDFs, we entered in the database, and for a while, they're not currently online, but that whole database is searchable. So people can go back and see, they can look up their relative. Oh, here's Aunt Jane, and here's a copy of the program that she, from that night that she performed. So we're trying to capture the history. Tell me your name again, ma'am.
My name is Dana Curtis.
Jana?
Dana.
Janet.
Dana. D as in David. Dana.
Dana, thank you.
Curtis.
Thank you. My ears aren't getting any younger. But Dana, she was just telling me that she has photographs from when Richard Mansfield Dickinson owned this place and inside. And we're going to put out the word to all of Tulsa. If you drove by and took a picture of this building, or if you took a picture of anything related to it, give it to us and we'll digitize it and add to the archives. This place has tremendous archives. When I got involved, but things were stuck in the filing cabinets, under the stairs, up in the leaky attic area, and we got some volunteers from the museum management program at Tulsa University. They organized it from end to end, and it's now a special collection out of the Tulsa Library. So, and we had some very valuable artworks by the same guy who did this cartoon, Clarence Allen. That guy was an amazing artist. And we had these giant, bigger than life-size portraits. Those are at the Tulsa History Museum, so they're no longer engaged or getting mildewed or whatever while we get the building taken care of. So a lot has happened, and now I'd like to turn it over to Ted to talk about Bruce and explain Bruce's involvement in this.
First of all, I just wanted to, we should all give Scott, if you've ever worked with someone who is like a rabid dog but nice, that's Scott. Scott would not let this project die. So thank you, Scott. Well done. And I'm glad he didn't hear that. He does have trouble hearing. We all do. That's okay. Sometimes it's convenient.
And Randy, if we're picking up the slack.
Oh, you're welcome. So last night, I recognized a lot of faces from across the street. Last night we held a small fundraiser. I don't know how well we did, but I was a bartender and I sampled my product. So I apologize for being a little late. I just want to say a few words about Bruce. Some of you may have heard a preview of it last night near the end of our show, but Bruce Goff was born in Alta, Kansas in 1904. He did the Spotlight in 27, 28. It was in between the Tulsa Club and the Boston Avenue United Methodist Church, all three of which he was the designer and or architect. But this building is fundamental to his future and how he really began to develop his own system. So he started in architecture as a 12-year-old. His dad was pretty much a leak in the payroll. That's the kindest thing I'll say of him. And so his dad put him to work, working for someone to bring money home to help support the family. At 12 years old in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He pinned him with the right firm, Rush, Endicott, and Rush. They were the premier architectural and structural engineering company of their time in Tulsa, which was booming and it already was the oil capital of the world when they moved here. And so his background in working with them was primarily in structure. You know, just learning how to put a building together, not necessarily the design. They did not interfere with how he looked at the world and how he looked at his designs. They just kind of let him go. I really liken him best, and I say this unequivocally. He's America's Mozart in terms of architecture. He was a child prodigy who later he lived a lot longer than Mozart for different reasons. He wasn't poisoned. But because he lived so long, he got to develop his system, which was unencumbered by European architecture, or even Sullivan, or even Frank Lloyd Wright. And so his system, which he began here, was drawing out of the client, in this case, Patty Adams Schreiner. Did I get that right? I got it wrong last night. That was a little late in the evening. He drew out of Patty what she wanted, not what he was to impose upon her. And so this is what he came up with, which is loosely a combination of international style and Art Deco. I mean, how many people at 24 years old would have come up with a round window with notes on it, and then essentially tumbling piano keys coming down to reinforce the center in almost a Beaux-Arts manner? It's a very symmetrical building. But then when you look back at the house, it's almost like Bauhaus, no pun intended. It's very German in its simple modern lines. So this is what he drew out of his client. In later life, this became known as the American School of Architecture when he taught at OU from 46 to 56, 57. He taught his students that same principle. And I was lucky enough not to study on here. I'm not that old. Some of you are. But I was lucky enough to have that tradition taught to me as well. And that is American. We don't start with Europe. We don't start with Asian architecture. We start with ourselves. Because in America, we can do whatever we want, you know? And so that is what this building does. This represented the beginning of his break from, I'll just call it traditional architectural manner, and into this new world of discovery and the American School of Architecture. And thank God for Patty Adams Schreiner for turning him loose, believing in him. I'm sure it went over budget. She only lasted a few years in here, but thank you for the spotlight, for continuing to honor this Tulsa treasure. Because I'll reiterate what Scott said and what I said last night. Without this, there is no Tulsa. You know, George Kaiser, our current Tulsa legacy supporter, you know, Wade Phillips, a whole lineage of how you give back to your community. He said to me that there are not a whole lot of things that are world class in our city, but he wants to make it a world class city so he can get bright minds to move here. He's got a big program which the Tulsa Foundation gives tours of to get these people from other places to move here. But what do we have? In his opinion, we have a built environment that is bar none. I mean, we have a collection of remarkable buildings here, and this one stands out. So let's thank Bruce Goff. And you all have a good weekend.
Brad, thank you. Why don't you come up, you say something, and Barbara, come up here and talk about that. Or talk about your family, whatever you want. Yeah, introduce your family for us. How about all the various advocates and walkers gather around up here?
Well, I'm Brad Adams Walker. This is my cousin Barbara Walker Abbott, and we are part of the Walker Adams clan. We have a number of other members here as well, including my son Richard Adams Walker, all with the name that came from our great aunt. And I met her once in 1964. She passed away in 65, and she lived next door to my grandparents. And my father took me next door to meet Patty, and I was about 9 years old, and I was absolutely intimidated. I had never met anyone that had that sort of presence, that sort of this sort of aura about her, and her legacy of music and talent runs through the family. I did not get that gene. I did become an architect, and I just love everything that's been going on here. I got involved and met these folks here a few years ago, and this is just a wonderful building.
Brad is from Denver. He flew in for this.
Thank you.
Son I flew in last night. Let me get the rest of my family up here. And Barbara, for many, many years, saved, when Patty was a young woman, in 1910 and 1911, she got a scholarship, for lack of a better term, to study in Europe. So she was a woman from very modest means, and was able to study in Paris in 1910 and 1911. And thank God she kept a diary. And that diary was handed down through my family. Barbara held on to those diaries for many, many years to keep them safe. They're over 100 years old. With Scott's help, we connected on this and persuaded Barbara to let me borrow them and had them scanned, and they have now been transcribed. So every word that she wrote during that period of time has been captured for history. It was a very special time in Paris, 1910, 1911. I believe it's called the Belle Époque. Yes, very special time. She met very famous people. She performed in very famous places, and now we have those diaries saved for my children and everyone's children. So we would like to give that back to the city of Tulsa. So, thank you.
I had the honor of studying with her from the time I was 6 until I was 18. Wow. And I said I would never be went to OU and studied piano performance and pedagogy, and did not want to be a solo performer. And so I started teaching. And over the years, I taught off and on, and music just became so much a part of my heart. And I was fortunate to have studied with two good professors at OU. The last one providing more of a musical view of the music, and a position came up at First Methodist in Broken Arrow, and Bill Rowland. There he is. He's right there. Oh, there he is. Hi. And I knew where I was supposed to be, and that was in music for the church. And so since '83, I've been doing that, and it's been a blessing. My heart is enriched, and I kick myself every time I think of how I tried to get away from practicing, which I did sometimes, because where's my brother? One went.
God, right here. Two brothers right here.
Because they used to tell me to be quiet because there was a show on TV. The piano and the TV were side by side. So, but I wanted to be like the other kids, and so I tried to sight read my lessons, which I got by with sometimes. But after I became the teacher, I knew that my students weren't practicing, and so I know she knew. She always wanted to invent an exercise to strengthen my fingers. I remember Ron, when he started, we're just a year and a half apart, and his fingers had the strength. Mine were long, but they didn't have the strength, and she would call weekly to get me on the phone to say, I've got a new exercise for you, can you please come down? Well, anyway, I'm just so blessed to have studied with her and to have gone through the diaries and just felt in some places a parallel. Some of the music that she got new in Paris was some that she gave me to do in high school, like Fantasy Impromptu, and that was her go-to piece. But we both kind of drifted out of not playing that anymore. And anyway, my life is blessed to have been with her, and I wish I had gone to her house for those exercises. Thank you.
One of the challenges of building this monument is that this stone, it came from Sri Lanka. There's only a few places in the world that have stone that can be lasered like this. So Benchmark Monument ordered this for us, and they had an app that showed like where the boat was that was bringing this to America. It's really amazing. But it's very, very hard. And when we got it, they said, you can't drill this. It'll shatter it. The other granite is softer. So that really had us stumped for a while. We finally did get it drilled by a specialty company, and Larry Cochran's got the video. He's going to put a video on YouTube eventually, the whole process of building this. But we did get 3 bolt holes drilled in this, and I saved the little the core. And I want to give this a Barbara because it is so hard, and this to me represents the character of Patty Adams Schreiner, who did what she did in 1910. A young lady who traveled all over bravely, who had this surpassing talent that always raised her above everybody else, and she overcame so many obstacles, and she had obstacles to the end of her life, but she kept on overcoming. Her legacy is not just this building, but her nieces and nephews who went on to musical careers. And the thing about Patty that I want Tulsa to appreciate, I used to be a reporter, and I covered the Van Cliburn competition, something that happens every 4 years for young pianists. And Van Cliburn, of course, was famous for his Cold War victory in a competition in Moscow. And I interviewed one of the judges who made a really big deal about who her teacher had been and her teacher's teacher and so forth. Well, everybody who had lessons from Patty or one of her students, like Elwyn Ratliff, who was very prominent in this town, or Dale Roller, or on and on, they can trace through Patty their instruction lineage back to Mendelssohn and Beethoven, literally. So, I mean, that is a big deal. That is a big deal. All right, let's get it. I want to have.
Can I say something
Yes,
about
go ahead.
this?
Go ahead.
I was just amazed when you held this up, because one of the things she had her teachers do was to get a gas pipe that was as long as your fingers would allow, and you did an exercise like this to strengthen. And so all of us had to go get a gas pipe. And this, while it's small and doesn't look like a gas pipe, it's just a replica of that. And I'm so thankful for this. That's really. And I have friends who studied with her, and they're in Cleveland, but they didn't want to get out of bed. So, but anyway,
All right, thank you.
we all have these.
Dana, do you want to say anything about Richard?
Oh gosh, my relationship with Richard Dickinson is, I was his niece.
Can you speak
And-
up?
Yes, I'm sorry, my voice doesn't carry very well. But my Aunt Edna and Daniel Logan lived in that house when Dan was young. And I think you know that part of the story. Well, my mother, Virginia Bailey, was Edna Logan's sister. So as I came on, and I was born the same day as Dan Logan, January 28th, and I was named Dana after Dan. So that's our relationship. But Uncle Dick, my memories of this house, it's almost hard to talk about. It's almost storybook. It's like something in a novel for a small child to come into a house like this and roam around and have an uncle like Richard Dickinson, and he was a very dignified, elegant gentleman who would, just like the movies, tell you how to walk, how to talk. He would give me diction lessons when I was young and teach me how to speak properly. But I spent a lot of time here because my mother was sick. So I grew up here with my cousins and roamed around in his house and played upstairs for that outdoor barbecue and that little outdoor area. There was so much to do in this house. And I remember Uncle Dick Dickinson, playing that piano on that stage. And he played by ear beautifully. And he so wanted me to be a pianist. He really wanted me to play the piano. But we had a lot of family Christmas dinners on that stage. Big tables stretched out. Thanksgiving dinners. And those are my memories, more than the theater side of it. He was very theatrical, just being who he was. But it was wonderful. And all these years, I have so hoped somebody or something would get a hold of this place, because it's an unbelievable treasure. And as you all know this. So, been watching, and I'm hoping that all of this and what we're doing today, and who's been here to visit, I'm hoping that we'll start to see some big changes occur here, and Uncle Dick would be very proud. Very proud. At one time, it was considered that the Petroleum Club would buy this. I don't know who knows this. When Uncle Dick left, and his instructions were never, this needs to go to the actors and aspiring musicians, and that was that. So.
Well, it's getting pretty warm out here. We have refreshments. Hang on. We have refreshments inside, the cold drinks and cake. But we have two quick things. Sue first, and then Virginia has a message from Joey Bartlett.
Well, we've talked about the importance and significance of the building. Let's go back for a moment to the original Spotlight Club. Very good friend of mine, fact, her mother was my first Spanish teacher in the 5th grade. But she and I graduated TU together, and the whole purpose of this group was to start a scholarship fund for young thespians. And Lucille Lyons and her husband, Charles? John. Thank you, John, for John. They were with Richardson, the foremost couple. They had money, they had funding, they were New York actors, and when they came to Tulsa and started the Little Theater over on Delaware, their aim was to provide money for scholarships. And we kept doing it week after week, and they said, we're on to something, let's keep this going. Well, my friend Pilar Garcia was a good singer, kind of funny, and a heck of a dancer with her Cuban background, and she was here just last week. So let me read you something I think is pretty significant. All right, she says, hold on. We are grateful for all the devotion by so many performers who have contributed to the accomplishments from Little Theater to this theater called Spotlight. Though Spotlight is small of stage and seating, it looms large in its remarkable history of scope and purpose. There was none of a spirit of unity for mutual aims, which I wish I had printed this out, I'm sorry, which aims for the thoughtful years of donating to local and state charities and sponsoring helpful scholarships to students or actors. Spotlight in the beginning didn't realize the significance of this structure they called home. They donated thousands and thousands of dollars that were collected every Saturday night into their little piggy bank, Sammy, and that money was donated to St. John's and Hillcrest for their infant units and for SIDS equipment to help resuscitate infants that had fallen fatally ill in their cribs. We donated thousands of dollars to HISM out there in Sand Springs and up to Veneta Hospital for AV equipment and microphones for all of those places. And then suddenly, Larry Stockard gets on board and says, hold the phone. Let's think about what we're giving money to. Let's concentrate on the money we do have to restore this iconic presence here on Riverside Drive. So that's what's happened. And Pilar, she was in town by accident to see family. When I brought her down here last week, she was over the moon. One of the things she was over the moon about was seeing Jer Unkefer, Mr. Spotlight himself. So let's don't forget Jer and his family. There's one more little piece that I want to mention, which kind of ties together the history of the building and the history of this theater, and that is the tunnel. Those of you present almost inclusively know about the tunnel. There was no way to get from one side of the stage to the other without going around that wonderful patio presence that Goff initiated for this building. So we said, well, okay, it's raining, it's snowing, whatever. We need to get actors to the other side of the stage. Well, we've got part of a basement. Let's finish it. So it was Jer Unkefer and Lee Louder. When Jer was still in high school, Lee Louder, she lived down a block or two here on Riverside Drive, and she and her 5 children on weekdays, summer days, afternoons, they came down here shovel by shovel, wheelbarrow by wheelbarrow, up a tiny little 2x4 ramp, up the back stairs and out to the driveway to build that tunnel so that we could get those stage entrances. So let's don't forget the Uncapers and the Louders, they were significant. I would read the rest of this, but it's lengthy and she is a bit wordy. But we love Pilar, we love all the wonderful Olio acts we have. And thank you, Tulsa.
All right. Final word, and then we'll go inside. Dewey Bartlett, a former mayor, performed here, and he sent us, he's out of town, but he sent us a little message that Virginia will read for us.
It was really short. From Dewey Bartlett, our mayor, Tulsa mayor. It's a great honor for me to be part of the Spotlight Monument. One thing that I have learned by playing my harmonica is that playing with a talented band made me sound so much better than I deserve. But I can tell you he's too modest. We could say the same thing about him. This monument and the Spotlight Theatre are great examples for us. My sincere thanks for including me, Mayor Dewey Bartlett.
Right. Okay, let's head inside. And by the way, there's souvenir programs lying near the cake, so help yourself.
Oh,